I slay the dragons all day, but I come home and I just want to be a girl. And I'm having trouble with people understanding that. And I always wanted people to see me in my flower crown, but they never did.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Climbed. I have a super special guest today. I was like chasing this woman down to have a recording with her because this is a really special recording for me. And so today we have Kim. I am so grateful that you decided to join me in today's interview and to share your experience in the program. And so welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much. It's my absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Kim. So why I decided to have this interview because, well, I decided a long time ago, but I was really excited because, I get a lot of messages from women who are older than me. I mean, obviously, because I'm 33, for example, and I get a lot of messages and questions. Will this work for me? Because I am older, right? And because my reality with men or in dating or marriage or relationships is very different. And so, and we have a few women who are older than me, let's say 45 plus in the program. And so every time the process works, right? So when I heard your story, your success story, I was really excited. I reached out and I said, Kim, let's get on a call because I want more women who are older women to also know that a great reality of men exists, that they can be dating and should be dating, and then the process is the same, and the claim program can help them. And so you are one such woman. That's why I'm extremely grateful that you're here. And so what we're going to start with, Kim, is maybe you just introduce yourself to us, and then in this interview you can share as much or as little as you want. Of course, it's up to you. So we're going to start with introducing yourself, and then how did you find about my work?
Okay, so my name is Kim. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. I found you, I think, on Instagram, probably. Um, I had a very, very long career as a corporate executive and a lawyer. Um, and I actually think that your program is beautiful for young women starting out in their relationships and anybody along the arc. I find that there are a fair number of women my age interested in your program and participating in your program because they finally have time to pay attention to themselves, right? We've been very busy having careers. I raised 3 children. Along the way, I got married 3 times. And we've been successful in certain parts of our lives and not as successful in other parts of our lives. Our femininity, our feminine power, and our emotional intelligence and strength have sort of been out there, but never been the focus of at least my attention. I was so busy going and having a career. It wasn't until I retired that I had time to really look at my life.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense when you said femininity was never the focus, and it was only when I retired that I started to look at these things. Okay, and so do you remember? I actually know, Kim, you were on a discovery call with my husband, String, and I told him today. He
Yeah.
actually says hello, and he was like, "Oh, you're talking to Kim? Okay, say hello." And I was like, "Yep." And yeah, so what made you? Because obviously you were exposed to my materials. I'm curious, what really resonated with you, and what made you book your discovery call?
So I have been, a wife, a mother, an executive, a leader. I hired, mentored women throughout my career. And I always actually led from my feminine. But it was very, very difficult because there are times I worked in a very male dominated industry. I worked in the gaming industry, the hotel industry, the real estate industry. And so certain times you had to get really, really tough. Um, I know that I brought that home sometimes, and I know that it was hard on the men in my life. I raised 3 boys, and I really wanted them to have healthy, respectful relationships. And I loved meeting String. I think I was one of his very first discovery calls. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I actually had a first discovery call with Barbara. And I think I wasn't ready, and she really challenged me. And I didn't like it. I sort of went away saying, how are all these young girls going to tell me what it is to be a woman? How do they know anything about it? And so when she came to that call, um, she wanted to do a drop in. She wanted to do all of this vulnerable stuff. I'm sort of like, well, wait a minute. I don't even know you. So I'm not so sure that this is something that I want to do. So I canceled my second call with Barbara. I still felt really, really interested and compelled by the work. So I kept following you and I kept listening to you. And you're going to know my age when I tell you this, is that when you had John Gray on your podcast, I was like all in. So I read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus when it was published in the 80s. And I was like,
Mhm.
this guy totally gets it. This idea that men and women are the same does not work, is never going to happen. So I was the second generation of women. So I didn't have to wear the pantsuits, and I didn't. I always wore fishnet stockings and relatively tight pencil skirts. That was my thing. And that was disarming for people in my business. And so they didn't know, like, I'm having this like total girl feminine thing happening. And then there's this woman who's sort of being a big boss. So how do I rationalize all of that? I don't think I knew how to rationalize it. I'm sure in my romantic relationships, I wasn't very good at rationalizing it. So I was super interested in your work, which was to say, oh, women are a species, right? We are something different, right? And there is immense, incredible power in that. And so the way that we get to live and step into that power is not by pushing down our femininity, but really embracing it, right? By saying, I'm going to take this incredible power that is within me and figure out how to harness it in a healthy and positive way that makes men feel both respectful of me, but also makes me feel safe. And those are hard things to get together. And I knew that in your work, you had thought about all of those issues. And actually, it was much more powerful than I ever would have imagined because, yes, it improved my relationship, it improved my understanding about what men want, need, desire, deserve. But it also made me a better mom to my boys because I could talk to them about maybe not having been the best example, but what they might think about as they went and made their choices of mates as they dated. So it was just this spill off effect that helped me professionally in my romantic relationship, as a mom, as a friend. So it was incredible.
Wow, thank you. So before I want to ask you about the program itself and your biggest aha moments, which you already started talking about. But I'm really curious, Kim. So here you were, this hotshot executive who focused on your career, a lawyer in the gaming industry. Like that's tough, and we have quite a few. Well, I can think of one in the entertainment industry in Las Vegas, and she was basically having the same conversation with me that it's really tough. And of course, all the women that we have in the program are busy, successful, ambitious, and so being in the men's world and being a woman is tough because you do have to compete. But I love that you're saying that the power is in our feminine. So the question is, how do we harness it so that we don't get so rigid and not only move forward in this masculine way to our own detriment, but also to the detriment of our relationships, motherhood, and so on and so forth. And so, where were you when you signed up for Discovery Call in terms of your current situation? So, you have retired, right? But you were kind of thinking about these things, right? So, what made you say yes to the program? So, you got on a call with my husband, not with Barbara, and I think this is a really good story that you shared. That who is this woman on the other end who's I don't know 15 years younger than me, telling me how to be a woman. I love that you said that because I think most women who are older than me would think that, right? And so I love that you're vulnerable, that you're sharing that, and then you got on a call with my husband, and then that sealed the deal. So why did you decide to say yes? What made you overcome that? Well, I don't want to call it judgment, or maybe that was a judgment. What made you say yes and overcome that obstacle, I guess, that, well, maybe this younger woman knows what she's talking about.
I just found the whole thesis so interesting. And I knew that you had something there. And one of the things I had spent time since my retirement, which at that point was probably about a year and a half, is I had spent time trying to reconnect my emotions with my body. Because one of the things that my job required me to do was compartmentalize things, right? You couldn't show up um, with your head full of other things, your relationship, your kids, your whatever. And so it was get down, ready to work. I think that I had put a lot of my feminine energy aside, right, to just survive day to day in the busiest time of my life. So I finally had time, and I was really interested in kind of excavating for myself where that was. And it's funny. I had one of my very best friends in the world is a man about my age. And I remember when, after I left my work, he said, "My goodness, what are you going to do?" And I said, it's so interesting for me because I slay the dragons all day, but I come home and I just want to be a girl. And I'm having trouble with people understanding that. And a lot of people in the program may find this is that where we meet men is in our work. So the men I dated, the men I married were not necessarily in my company, but I met them when I was exercising my capacity as a corporate person. So they see you negotiating transactions, being really tough, saying no, and some not using nice language, whatever it is, right, that got you to where you needed to be professionally. And they had trouble seeing you in a different light. And I always wanted people to see me in my flower crown, but they never did.
Mm. Yeah, I think you bring up a really interesting point that, and for men, when we think about the male journey, right, they don't have to do that. They don't have to switch roles because they're like in their masculine, in the world at work, which is a masculine world, right? Business and career. And then they're in their masculine with their women, right? And so there's that whole steady, well, this is who I am at work, and this is exactly who I am in my relationship. But as a woman, there is that switch that needs to happen where you're right. It's you're a man. Well, not necessarily a man. You can bring that feminine energy into work and lead from the feminine, as you mentioned before. But it is that thing. And I actually never thought about this, that, yeah, most women would interact with men or meet men, obviously, because we spend most of our time at work. And so when you think about that, then the men see you in that masculine energy, and they don't even realize that that's not who you want to be in the romantic realm. And so that's a really interesting play there. And it obviously all comes down to you being able to do that switch, but also be able to communicate what you want, to set up those boundaries, right? And to really, I just had our group coaching call yesterday, and we had this conversation with this woman, and where she said, "Oh, this man wanted to split the bill on a date," or whatever the situation is, and so we need to let them know, because we can't assume that men work with you all day. It's 50-50. So he gets on a date, not all men, but some men, he's like, that's 50-50 too. And so it's up to us to know what we want, to embody that, and to communicate that, hey, that doesn't feel good in my body. That's not what I want. What I want is actually to be a girl, to surrender, to wear my flower crown when I'm with you. And I want to feel safe, and I want to feel taken care of. And that's what I want. If that's not for you, that's totally fine. But that's what I want. And so it's really interesting that you're saying that. So when you joined the program, Kim, were you single or were you already in a relationship?
I was in a relationship. I had been dating someone for um, a little bit over a year, and
Hmm.
we were struggling um, because I wasn't very good at boundaries, and I wasn't very good at articulating what I needed or wanted. And one of the really, really pivotal moments for me in the program was, I think it's in module 1 or 2, where there is an exercise that says, I am available for X and I am not available for Y. And for me, it was like a switch had flipped because it wasn't complicated. It wasn't emotional. It was like, I am available for kindness. I am available for being spoiled. I am available for being reliable and honest. I am not available for being the guy. I am not available for hanging pictures. I am not available for changing tires. I am not available for last minute dates. I am not available for you're being late. Whatever the definition is, that construct for me was like boom.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's continue this conversation with aha moments. So you said the first one was boundaries, and we do embodied boundary work. So it's not only decide or think about what is your yes, what is your no, but actually embody that in your body, do the practice so that when you communicate, because it's one thing to set your boundaries, but obviously we do boundaries because they've been we do boundary work because our boundaries have been violated. And so we need to communicate. So the first step is to understand, to discover what are your boundaries, then embody them, and then communicate. And so when we communicate boundaries after we've done our embodiment practice, they're so much stronger. And of course, we communicate them, making a focus on the feelings so that men understand and don't feel attacked, and so on and so forth. So boundaries was big for you. What else, Kim, when you think about like the biggest aha moments in the program, what were they for you?
Well, I think that there's all this talk about feminine flow, and I know that so many people struggle with it. I've been a meditator for ever, 2 decades. So, meditation and sort of getting into my mind or emptying my mind was not something that was new to me. But the movement part of processing and releasing was a bit of an exercise to sort of start. But once I got it, I found it to be incredibly effective at moving emotion through. Because I think that some of us, especially if we're not good at articulating what we need or want, disappointment and fear comes out as anger, right? So, what men find from us is anger, yelling, nagging, whatever that looks like, which starts a whole chain of events that none of which are positive. But if we can actually get into that emotion, give ourselves 5 minutes to walk in the other room and process it, it then can become a spoken conversation, which is, wow, when you were late, it made me feel like you didn't respect me or prioritize me or care about me. So the conversation immediately pivots, right? Instead of a guy yelling back at you or getting angry or leaving or hanging up, he's mortified most of the time, right? And wanting you to be happy. One of the things I love about your program, I guess a mom of 3 boys makes it even more imperative for me. But I don't like this narrative that men are not good, that men are mean, that men are dishonest, that men will hurt our feelings.
Mm,
Is that I agree with you that most men are all they want to do is please you. And boy, are they confused at how to do that. And so when we don't tell
mm,
them how, then it doubles down, right? Because then they get confused and we get angry and we lose anything that we could have had. And so I think that the program teaches us how to stay within ourselves, to know by eliminating our limiting beliefs, which, as you kind of rightly point out, all boil down to I'm not worth it, in however it evidences itself, right? So many of us come with that. And if we can get over that and then believe that what we are asking for is reasonable, now maybe that person sitting in front of you or across from you isn't the person who's going to give it to you. But the more you are comfortable within that feeling of advocating for yourself, it comes across in a way that's not threatening, that's loving.
mm.
And it encourages that person who wants to please you to do that, and then he knows how because you actually told him.
You have such an interesting perspective on this, Kim, and I think because I interview women all the time, and I think the maybe the generational difference really plays into that. But I really love kind of your how you explain it, because I don't hear it from like women of my age or a little bit older, whatever. You just described it in a way that makes so much sense to me. But I haven't thought of that. I mean, I of course I did, but not in that way. But I love that you're, because when I teach, like I teach feminine flow in my own words, but every woman has her own experience and comes from a different background, and so she synthesizes all this information, and in whatever way she understands it and uses it in her life. But I think how you described it is probably the one of the most simple ways to understand what feminine flow is, because feminine embodiment, when women start, they're like, what the hell am I doing rolling on the floor, whatever. But you're right, it gives you, and that's how I try to explain it to women, but you put it so beautifully, because yeah, emotions arise, things happen, men do something or say something, and instead of reacting right away and saying you did this and da 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 da, and it all escalates, and then men complain that we're crazy, that we're nagging, I can never win, constantly. That's what men complain about every time. So if we don't want to be that, and I think women feel that too, like I don't like that feeling, I don't want to be in that state. And so when we do feminine flow, is what I teach in the program, it gives us a pause. As you said, it gives us a pause to actually feel, and that disappointment and fear not to become anger, because then we have an avenue to release and to sit. I can sit with myself and I can embody and hold that in my body and be comfortable with it, right? Because all we do is, how can I welcome the discomfort in my body? And then when we communicate that with men, we're not coming from a place of anger. He doesn't feel attacked, but you're just coming from a place of, this is how it made me feel. And so it's just such a great basis for harmonious relationship, where men are not afraid of you anymore, walking on eggshells and stuff. Like I don't want to be in a relationship like that. And that's what I'm working on every day, and it doesn't end, as you know, Kim. It's constant. Like I had to do my flow yesterday and talk to string in that way, and but it becomes so much better. And the relationship, I don't know, well, you'll talk about the results hopefully in a second, but for me, in time, so in the beginning it's like this volatile thing, because you don't know what you're doing, it's uncomfortable, you don't know how to flow, all of this resistance comes up. But when you kind of understand how it works, the relationship balances itself out, and it becomes easy, and it becomes harmonized. And one of the other things you mentioned, I just wanted to comment on the fact that you're a mother of three boys. And it's really interesting, because I think as a mother of three boys, you do have a unique perspective. And that's what I was always, and I'm still perplexed by the fact that, when I talk to women, these are mothers of boys also, and I was over, like, I did not understand, how can women not get it? Well, some women really get it, but a lot of women don't. And I'm like, don't you see this in your son, or how he, reacts, behaves? And we are mothers to sons, to men. We are raising men. And so by changing our beliefs, like, we do pass these beliefs to other generations, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, about this work. And I always say in coaching calls or in the program, that story stops with you. The fact that you don't trust men, that men are cheaters and stuff. And when you have boys, you can so easily pass these beliefs to them, that they think that all men are X, Y, and Z. And so specifically as a mother of boys, I love that you mentioned that, and you said it made me be a better mother, because then your sons are those men, or are becoming those men, who then are dating these women who are then, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's just a cycle, and it keeps going, and that cycle can stop, where if men are raised by mothers who have a healthy belief system about masculinity, femininity, then he's going to go out there and treat women in that way. He's going to feel like, my masculinity is appreciated, and it's not toxic, and I can take you out, and I can court you, and because I saw my mother do that, and it was so beautiful and harmonious. So Thanks for mentioning that, Kim. So I guess now let's talk about where you are and what are the results that you're seeing in your relationship. And you a little bit mentioned about your boys, but I'm also really curious to hear maybe some examples as well, maybe some stories or something. So where are you now, and how does it feel?
So it is actually kind of miraculous in a certain way. If you look at the arc of energy, right, from masculine to feminine, and I can't recommend enough reading David Daida's books because Enlightened best book ever, right? Yes, about what it says about, but really that's a proxy for polarity, how it affects all of our relationships and frankly all of our interactions with people, including ourselves. But his thesis is the people kind of toggle between masculine and feminine, and someday you could be this, someday you could be that. I come 100% from my feminine all the time. um, and I realized what was happening is I was attracting incredibly masculine men. um, I was married to the three of them. I dated them. So my issue wasn't I had all of this feminine energy in my men that wasn't working. But what was happening is I was attracting all of these masculine men, but not being comfortable in understanding it when I couldn't figure out how to navigate it. So what would happen is I became the frog farmer, which is I attract this masculine, beautiful person into my life, and then I can't tolerate allowing him to live in his masculine energy, right? I've got to start controlling it and being mad about it and shutting down over it and really sabotaging my own relationships. And you talk about breaking the cycle. And I will say all of this work is so monstrously important because our children learn about relationships from living in our homes. We model for them what a relationship is, and they don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent. Mine weren't the greatest, right? There was a lot of conflict and there was a lot of not good communication. And I have actually had a lot of started out as apology, but beautiful conversations with my boys about what relationships are about, what healthy relationships are about, accepting my responsibility for what happened in those relationships, the instability that it brought to their lives, um, and how it can be better. And so the skills that I learned with you just totally accelerated. We can read all the books. I'm a vast consumer of all the books, right? We can go to the shrink. And you sent me some interviews to look at. And one of the women who you talked to said, I could have done talk therapy for another 20 years and I never would have gotten it. We all know
Mm,
the precepts, right? We know what we're supposed to be doing because you have all these type A successful women in your cohort, right? They're
right.
amazing. So they study out the yin yang, right? They're all in their heads about knowing exactly how they're supposed to do it and what text should I write and, what should I do about this and that, and they know it intellectually. But the question is, how do I get it into my body? And how am I okay with releasing my head, right, from my body and understanding and trusting my feminine energy to steer me in a way that is kind and receptive and good and not overthink it, but actually trust myself and what I was born with enough. And that's what
Mm,
I think uh, the incredible power of what you do is. And it's a combination of your vast experience in figuring out a lot of stuff, being very smart about culling different philosophies and figuring out how it works, and also being really open to a continued evolution of how you think about things, right? The community is really good. I can't get on the coaching calls all that much. I listen to some of them and I read the Facebook a couple times a week. And I just love the interactions with people, the support that women are getting from one another, people being willing to say, that guy sounds not so good, right? And maybe you were
mm.
being sort of tough. when you lost your mind about this one, where he picked the restaurant or wanted to go to a park or whatever, you know? Um, and I love that, which is, I guess, this is what Barbara challenged in me, which is my willingness to drop all of those protective things and step in,
Mm.
right? Step into the teaching, step into the flow, step into the community. And once you do that, then your heart and your mind become opened and you can learn.
Mm. So beautiful. Thank you, Kim, for sharing that. So, where are you in the
Oh,
relationship
you keep
now? So,
asking
for
me.
example,
Oh, so what happened?
yeah,
So
yeah.
this
How is it different? Tell us, how is it different?
Okay. So I will tell you another one of the books that comes up in the reading list is called The Surrendered Wife, right? I hate the
Hmm.
title. And all of my girlfriends who are all these high-powered women are like, I'm never reading this thing called The Surrendered Wife. That's such crap. I said, but here's the thing about The Surrendered Wife. It shows you how to use your power, right? And I tried it for one whole weekend. I didn't fight about, you picked sushi, I really want Thai. You want to, go at 8, I really want to go at 8:15. I want to drive this car, you want to drive that. I didn't do any of that. I was kind of like,
Mm.
this is your spot. You get to own this, you own this day for me. And I am here to enjoy, to love, to be loved just today. And it was the most magnificent thing. And so I was the guy who I was dating, and had been single for like 20 years. He was one of those guys, a bit older even than me, and he was like dating all of those hotter, younger, cooler girls, right? And he decided, it's funny, when men turn 65, or even worse when they're 70, then they decide, oh, I want someone smart and beautiful who my kids like, who I want to live a life with, right? And so he had gotten to that place sort of just generically before I met him. And so the beginning part of our relationship, it was super fun. I mean, he's loads of fun and spontaneous and generous and lovely, but doesn't feel all in and doesn't feel like a committed person. Um, I didn't like that very much, but I stuck with it because of the attributes of him being kind and generous and nice to my kids, and compatible in lifestyle with me. But I was really just feeling like I was treading water in the relationship. I wanted more, but since wasn't feeling commitment from him, then I stepped back. And you know what happens when that happens, right? Everything deteriorates. So I tried to step into the relationship using some of the tools I learned in Claim. But I didn't have to give up my power to step in. I actually reclaimed my power because I knew what I wanted and I knew what I wasn't going to do. And I knew it in a calm way, in not a hysterical way, in not a catastrophic way, but in a really beautiful way. It was just clear to me. And so I could live with him in a way that was so much more centered, right? I was calm. I wasn't looking for signs that he was committed or not committed, but I was just there for that day. And I was there for that week. And all of a sudden, he turns into Mr. Commitment, right? Oh, we have to be together every day. I want you to live in my house. Like this, my grandson is your grandson. The whole super commitment thing, right? And I was like, wow, that is so strange. And I realized again what power I had. Not when I was worrying about getting what I wanted and understanding where he was and needing to know what was going to happen in the future, but in a really present way. And then, of course, I said, "Well, I'm not so sure. I don't know." Um, so it was another 6 months of sort of watching that commitment, which cemented and grew, right? A person who really had trouble telling me that he loved me, a person who really had trouble looking toward the future, like had trouble making plans for Thanksgiving, was all about like what's happening 2 years from tomorrow, right? So it was really it was so interesting to me intellectually, but it really made me feel different than I had ever felt in a relationship before. Um, it was just much more enveloping.
What a beautiful story. Yeah. He suddenly turned into Mr. Commitment
Oh my
the minute
gosh,
you
crazy.
love it. So, my last question before we go into the question about, why would you recommend women joining this program? I'm really curious, Kim, what do you feel like for older women in the program? What do you feel like are the unique challenges that they're dealing with? And how does the program help them go through these challenges in terms of, you know, men? Because I feel like, once you pass 45 or 50, obviously you might have been married a few times. Your kids are probably grown up or no. And so I've gotten this feedback that, Anna, you got to think more about the women who are 45 plus, 50 plus, because it's a different reality. And I'm in my head, I'm like, yes, I hear you. And the process is the same. But I'm still very mindful of, because, we haven't done anything differently with you. But I'm still very mindful of it. So I'm curious.
So the process is the same, Anna, and
Hmm.
you don't know because you haven't experienced it, right? So age
Mm-hmm.
has pluses and minuses. The minuses involve what your face looks like after a minute, right? Your minuses include like how fast you ski down the hill, right? Your minuses include how long you can hold a headstand. But pluses, um, your pluses include a lot of experience. But when women, we all do patterns, right? And so I came to you because I said, I need to break a pattern, right? I keep on doing things with men that emanate from my relationship with my father, right? And you have talked a lot about that. Um, but and I kept on doing the same thing, attracting beautiful people and creating a relationship where everybody committed and a marriage that wasn't happy. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I said, I'm 62 years old. I'm never doing that again. Right? I can be alone by myself forever. I have a beautiful life, but I don't really want to be. So, what I think is different is that many women are really traumatized, right? They may have had a lot of negative interactions with men, right? And they're hardened into this belief that things are toxic and things are bad. And so
Hmm.
they focus on the negative, right? Because they're afraid. Fear drives a lot of negative emotion. We can't put our finger on it as fear, but, some had marriages where men left them. They were good wives and good spouses, and men left them for other women, and they were just not nice. People said things to them like, you're old, or you are boring, or whatever. So it's a lot of work, right? And so, no, they don't have to worry about their biological clock. They don't have to worry about their flow. I actually think your work around your menstrual cycle and your fertility is really fascinating. Less important for those of us who are postmenopausal, but really important, because I wish in my life that I would have embraced rather than found irritating
Hmm.
certain parts of my life that involved my fertility. I mean, I was lucky. I had very easy times getting pregnant, very easy pregnancies, beautiful births, all of that stuff. But and that's really important for a lot of your women because that's where they are and they're feeling pressure around that. The older women have
Hmm.
their kids or they're not having them. It's over, right? For all of us, that's done. But I don't want them to get hung up on that. The work is so important. And you know what I think is really beautiful is that we, as the mama bears of your whole group, have experience that you all don't have, right? I never had daughters, and I
Hmm.
see in all of you such lovely, beautiful women. It's like, they ask that question, what would you tell your 17-year-old self? I feel about many of you. What would I tell my 30-year-old self? So
Yeah.
it's an opportunity. I think that they and we make the community richer. And I would encourage them, share the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't forget the good parts, ladies. There are lots of them.
So beautiful. I feel like Kim, you should be our guest speaker once a month to the group because all these women are going to be like glued to the screen. And I lost my mother when I was
I know
really
you
young,
did.
and so I was always attracted to older women who've had the wisdom and who had the experience. And then all the women in the group who are older. There's not a lot of them. There's more and more now, but I always encourage them. And I see you commenting on the women, and I'm like, yeah, because there is so much wisdom. Another woman comes to mind, Mo, for example. She had
Hmm.
hysterectomy. I can't even pronounce that word, right? She had breast cancer, and she's 67, no, 62, can't remember. But she's got such rich experience, and I'm calling in those women. This is as women how we learned. We women learn through embodied resonance. Even in the way you're speaking, I'm learning what's behind your words, right? So it's not only the words that are penetrating me intellectually, as you said before, but I am resonating and I'm learning. So I'm just so grateful for your presence in the group, Kim, and how you said the mama bear. And I indeed want to, because the village is gone. Most of us do not have. I mean, my mother has passed, but all of the women in the program, most of them are not surrounded. Their relationship with their mothers is not there. The relationship with the fathers is not there. So when we come together to do this work together, we've got women in the program who are like 20. I think our youngest one was 26, and then we have the women who are like 65, for example. It's quite incredible, and we are doing the same work, which I find so beautiful, and how we learn from each other, and how you pass on your wisdom and experience. So I'm hoping we can maybe do a session or something where these women can ask you questions, because you have a lot of experience, not only 3 husbands, 3 boys, but you've done the work. And I'm so glad you're saying that the process is the same. It's just how you take that process into your life, and what you make of it. And you take what works for you, you leave the rest, and you just but it's all connected, because we're all women. We want the same thing, right? We want to be in a committed relationship with a committed masculine man. We want to feel safe, taken care of, cherished and adored. So thanks for sharing your story, Kim. So, for all the women who are listening and watching, why would you recommend women to sign up for a discovery call and perhaps even join the program?
Oh, I can't recommend it highly enough. I think that no matter where you are in your relationship, even if you're in a happy one, no matter where you are in your life, professionally, personally, you will learn. You will be enriched. You will be much more fully in your feminine. You will be a better leader, mother, spouse, friend than you ever were before. And you will
Mm.
also have the chance to meet such motivated and smart and international and kind and earnest people. Um, only upside, only upside and claimed.
Only outside. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kim. This was a pleasure. I really appreciate your shares and your experience, and thank you for doing the work, because doing the work is sometimes presenting, as a challenge in itself. And so thank you for being part of this community and continuing to be present and support all of us. And I'm learning from you, so I'm hoping that you are even more present and continue to share your wisdom with us. Thank you
You're
so
welcome.
much.
Thank you, Anna.